Welcome to another Wisdom Pod. We have a special guest today, Deborah Levine. Deborah and I were talking previously about her experience facing neo-Nazis. Her dad was I'm going to try to not modify the facts too much, but your dad served on the Second World War, Deborah, and he took extensive notes and documented his experiences with Holocaust survivors in camps. And you were into writing as well. You were into exposing the facts, I guess, and reducing the hate and documenting that. You studied at Harvard, and nowadays, Deborah Levine, Forbes DNI Trailblazer award-winning scriptwriter. She wrote 19 books. She's a Holocaust documentary creator and founder and editor at American Diversity Report. So yeah, journalist, but great journalist, I would say, and probably journalism in its purest form, because I think that journalists lost feathers nowadays. It seems that capitalism has blurred the portrait. We might talk about that today. Deborah, welcome to the pod. Can you tell me a bit more about yourself, what you're up to nowadays?
Sure. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. A little bit more about myself. Although I was born in Brooklyn, New York, I was brought up on the British island of Bermuda and was pretty much the only little Jewish girl on the island growing up until my dad decided to bring us back to New York. And my education was in America, and I went to Harvard also, as well as my parents. And at the time, I wanted to study world religions, and a major in that did not exist. I offered Harvard to create it for them. That did not go well. But I have spent quite a number of years in my career looking at the issue of diversity, but also in terms of religion. Years ago, right, I ran the National Workshop on Christian-Jewish Relations in Chicago, and I've kept on going ever since. My books are all about diversity, many of them about religious diversity, and then the memoirs. And one of the memoirs is called, quite rightly, The Liberator's Daughter.
Beautiful. Let's start with your dad. What kind of figure was he in your life, and what kind of stories did he documented, and how did these affect your life?
Right. My father was a rather military person who rarely spoke about what he had seen during the war when we were young. But he left all these books around the house and in my bedroom, like the Diary of Anne Frank. You probably know that. And I said to him, "Daddy, what happened to her?" And all he said was, "She died." End of conversation. Thank you very much. Yes. He was actually in running retail stores at that time. But when he retired, he became the chief financial officer of the American Jewish Archives in Cincinnati. And I started to realize that there was much more to his story. And when I took the job as the media person in Tulsa, Oklahoma, after the Oklahoma City bombing, and was trained by the FBI in security, dealing with neo-Nazis and white supremacists, that's when he came forward and shared his letters. And when I found out, I actually made an arrangement for him to do an interview on a radio show. And you can hear that interview on the AmericanDiversityReport.com. I wanted people to hear his voice. He was very modest. I said, "Daddy, you liberated a death camp He said, "Oh, no, no, there was one guy in front of me who actually opened the door." I said, "Daddy, I don't think people care." That was what he was like.
How did that impact you? Why did you decided to sort of pursue his legacy?
The experience in Tulsa, which included attending a very strange rally by a Holocaust denier named David Irving, uh, showed me that there was an underground movement to deny it ever happened. I could not let that be. And so I dedicated myself to working for the Jewish community, but for the truth, to show history, to, to be what my father could no longer be. He passed away 10 years ago. And I started writing this memoir while he was still alive. I remember showing him maybe the first chapter, and all he said was, well, it's getting better, which means it was lousy. He was very, very specific, critical. So I was able to write part of it when he was still alive, but I didn't finish it until he had passed away. And then people wanted a second, more personal view, as you're asking. What was it like? And I wrote a second memoir. Then I realized the world had changed. And I was taught by friends to write a script, one about my life and two about his. And the documentary, which is called Untold, Stories of a World War II Liberator, has won in about 15 international film festivals. And I continue to speak about it, to show it at universities, wherever. That's what I'm here for.
Not moving fast forward too much here, but the events that we're seeing nowadays with Hamas, I've spoke with an Israeli just this morning, was telling him that I was studying Benjamin Netanyahu. I always mess up his last name. And studying the complex events happening in Israel. What do you feel is happening there? What could be a potential solution to the current conflicts we're seeing?
This is a very, very difficult situation. Distressing for everybody. I feel for the Israelis. By the way, my grandchildren live in Israel, and I feel for the Palestinians who have been used by Hamas, who have been used by Iran, and the money that Iran has spent on all these terrorist organizations. There has to be an end to this at some point. And I feel as if the entire world is going to need to come together to look at this and not just blame one group or another, but to remake the world order in this part of the world. This must be radically changed.
And as someone that studied history, how can we make sure that events that happened back then do not happen over again? As someone that studied history and evaluated the efforts that were made in Israel to bring peace, how can we experiment with new potential solutions to solve that problem?
This is interesting that you should mention the history. One of the books that I wrote 30 years ago is called Israel Dialogue with Christians and Jews. And it was commissioned by the American Jewish Committee. And for some reason, this past summer, I felt that it was necessary to republish it, change it up a little bit, make it more modern, and do so. And it is up on Amazon so that people can understand better, right? The history behind right? What is happening today? I don't believe people do. They go to 1948 when the United Nations created Israel and don't go further back. But the reality is it goes back centuries, incredibly so, where Jewish people were forced out and were not permitted to go back until the 1940s, after World War II. So that there is a sense of Israelis being a sort of a colonial group. This is not the case. And people need to understand the history better so that they don't get caught up in a lot of the kind of um, conspiracy theories that are out there, which are not going to help.
As someone in the US and not in Israel, as I was reading the article or many articles on Israel-Palestine war yesterday, do you feel that US Jews still have a say at the table if they're not in the crossfire vs Israeli Jews that are right there? Do you feel there could be an advantage of being less emotionally connected, but having less facts and to not see this reality? Do you feel this can bring added value to the discussion? Because to me, Obama's intervention felt like someone that spoke a lot, but just someone that wasn't in the crossfire. And that's why a lot of people were like, dude, you're just not there on the ground with us. And talking about people that want to actually kill us and are sending rockets our way is just a waste of time.
The history is so complex, right? And the feelings of American Jews have been uh, rather diverse until October 7th, I think, when you're looking at uh, a sense of us all being in this together, especially since what is happening is an increase in anti-Semitism across the world and hate that is touching us all. It's very frightening. And I don't know where it's going to go, but it doesn't look good. So I'm not sure how many people are actually Netanyahu fans. He has been a fairly controversial figure, but Israel itself, its survival, that has been something that people really do care about. This whole thing with Gaza is very difficult. Not everyone agrees with it. And it's very difficult to find alternatives. Are you going to let Hamas continue in Gaza? You want to have a terrorist organization at your border? You know, this is crazy. So we are in a very difficult position. And the money behind Hamas, Hezbollah, and others, similar groups, right, coming out of Iran, much of it, right, is not going away. So what are we going to do? This isn't, we don't want it to explode, right, into an international mess. But I have written about this for one of my newspaper columns about a couple of weeks ago. I believe it already has. And now what do we do? Can't be in denial on this. Can't try and make it just, pretend it goes away.
Seems really hard also to negotiate with anger and sadness, or sadness that is converted into anger, the feelings of vengeance or basic human feelings. And when we started the interview, you were persecuted various times by online people, and just speaking about things, not only now, but historically, has sometimes people shut the doors down. It might be people that you insult when you're talking. Might be people that just close the doors down, or literally people that will tell you, I'll kill you for talking about that. It seems that these emotions are rooted in the past. It seems that it's our primitive behavior. I'm not immune to them. You're not. Well, I mean, you acquired wisdom and some thick shield. So did I. Way less than you did, most probably. But how much value is there in studying in the past, and what the future what lies in the future for us with technologies like VR that make physical pieces of territory obsolete? And what about a potential AGI which could bring us hyperabundance? Because it seems that humans try to consume everything in their passage, and they're very territorial, and they're very much about winning and losing, like crabs in the bucket syndrome. So, what can this new, more positive outlook on life and folks like Sam Altman and OpenAI and that are potentially working on AGI, what could these technologies bring to as a solution to solve that conflict?
There is definitely a need for a change in our human mentality. The column that I just wrote that should come out tomorrow is called Reason and Empathy for 2024. Right? And I make the point that somehow we have to be able to combine both, whether it's going to be through technology or not. But those of us who have the ability to combine them and put that out there, right, are needed more than ever. And one of the things that I've done is I've used AI to transform some of my stories for children called Bunny Bear Adventures in Diversity Land, right, into video stories that are very engaging and can give young people a sense of humanity with uh, with stories. One is about racism, one is about people with disabilities. Each one I wrote years ago, but using the technology, I am able to reach these young people, and I watch them, their parents, give me videos of them being in front of their TV watching it, being just incredibly engaged. They're just sitting there. They don't move, they don't shift, they don't do anything. They're fascinated by it. That is how I'm beginning, right, to create a new mindset for people.
I love that. I would love
And
to, yeah.
by the way, you can go onto the AmericanDiversityReport.com, look up Bunny Bear, and you will see a page with links to all 5 of those stories and the introduction, and enjoy them yourself.
Love that. I have the website here. I will have a look at that. I'd love to have an audio, more visual side through videos of this podcast, right? While we speak, there would be images and so forth. I'm pretty sure a company is going to deploy that technology this year. I'm excited for that. My last
Lovely.
question for today is, as a man, it seems to me that it's a bit more difficult for me to express empathy. I find myself not raging, but being irritated by people that are too much on the emotional side of things, you know, whether that's the woke movement, so-called woke movement, and so forth. It seems that the testosterone in my veins, which I very much favor in a capitalist world, seems that the capitalist economy favors the testosterone. It certainly rewards it. It seems that every time I have more testosterone in me, I sort of lose this empathy. So how can I reach an equilibrium point? You know, be ambitious, um, conquer not in the real sense of the word, you know, but accomplish, you know, climb that mountain and possibly redistribute that wealth and that power of mine. How can I keep on doing that without stepping on others' foot and lacking IQ in some of the words that I speak?
Great question, and it's not an unusual one. That's why I created something called the Matrix Model Management System, which includes a section on emotional intelligence, because we are almost programmed, right? To, if our buttons are pushed, the adrenaline goes up and we get this knee-jerk reaction and off we go. So one of the things that I did is I created a system called emotion metrics, where you can measure where you are emotionally, and you can use those measurements, right, to create habits that guide you through difficult situations so that you are not, right, at risk of the knee-jerk reaction that gets in the way of the incredible thought process that you have in you. Yeah, go
Another
for
cure to that is petting my dog while I'm talking to you. My dog's with an S.
it. Yes.
That warms my heart up. Where can people find out more about you, Deb?
Go to AmericanDiversityReport.com. You will see on there, maybe 1,200 articles by different people around the world. You will also see mine, my newspaper articles, my books, my keynote addresses, and you can send something to me through the contact button. I love to hear from people what you're doing, what you need, and how it's going for you.